Good evening. Tonight, an investigation into the surging popularity of for-profit colleges. These are not your Penn States or your USCs. Those schools, like most traditional schools of higher learning, are non-profit. But in the last few years, the popularity of for-profits, like the University of Phoenix and ITT Tech, have grown so dramatically they now account for 10% of all college students in the United States. They also are very expensive. So what are students at these for-profits getting for all that money? And who's paying the bill? Well, it turns out you are. Our story begins in Detroit with a woman who thought she was pursuing the American dream.
There used to be really, really nice houses. We call them flats here.
Margie Donaldson is a graduate of one of the largest for-profit colleges in America.
As a little girl, I always wanted to, work in corporate America and, live the American dream. And, I didn't want to be a product of my environment. And the best way to do that was to go to school and get an education, get that degree. That degree speaks in volumes. Once you get that, nobody can tell you anything.
And on the wall of her home, Donaldson has that degree, a bachelor's in criminal justice from ITT Technical Institute.
Getting an education has always been very important to me, especially being a little black girl in the city of Detroit. It was everything to me.
Especially after becoming a victim of the recession. Donaldson had a good-paying job at Chrysler before taking a buyout in 2008. But she'd never finished college, and she decided now was the time.
Like a war has just come through here.
Because this was what she was trying to avoid, returning to the Detroit neighborhood where she grew up.
Where I grew up and how I grew up, I didn't want to go back there. You always want to do better than, your generation before you.
And Donaldson wasn't alone. A government study estimates that an additional 2 million people went back to college when the recession hit.
I want to know what you found there.
Hundreds of thousands of them enrolled in for-profit schools, the fastest growing sector of American higher education. And one of the biggest is ITT Educational Services. This is not your everyday college. ITT Tech is a big business. Revenue for ITT Tech in 2012 was $1.3 billion. More than $1 billion of that revenue came from the federal government, you, the taxpayers. There are more than 140 ITT Tech campuses nationwide, and the school now has more than 60,000 students.
If you're interested in beginning a career in electronics, this might be an opportunity for you.
We offer degrees in business, e-business, management.
We've all seen the advertisements on television.
Accept our invitation to your success.
Schools like the University of Phoenix and Kaplan have become household names.
Call Kaplan College today at 888.
And they're only the most famous. Their sales pitch is that they will give you the skills you need to get a good-paying job.
Even though this time of recession I'm still employed, this is because ITT Tech helped mold me into an individual.
They will accept almost anybody who wants to go. And they make big promises about high-paying wages and exciting careers.
Make a choice that can make a difference.
ITT Technical Institute has 4 campuses in the Detroit area alone, which was perfect for Margie Donaldson.
Now earn a bachelor's in criminal justice.
She was intrigued by one of the degrees the school offers in criminal justice.
Oh, I can work in the forensic lab and, I'm smart enough to do this and do that. And it's just like, okay, I'm going to get a job that looks like that, on the TV screen.
Donaldson visited her local campus and enrolled in the criminal justice program. As a mother of 3, she could not afford the more than $20,000 a year of tuition at ITT Tech, but the school counselors had a solution. She could receive up to $5,500 a year in federal Pell Grants, and the rest could be paid with student loans. She signed, but Donaldson says she didn't really understand what she was signing.
They didn't tell me anything about the loans that I was signing up for. Okay. I would come in and they would say, this is how much it costs, this is how much your federal grant is, your Pell Grant is, and this is how much is left over, and these are your options as far as the loans. And it's like, okay, wow, really? Okay. I'm in this to win it, so whatever. Where do I sign?
Can you serve profit and can you serve the public good simultaneously? And I don't think we've answered that as far as education is concerned. A good job is characterized by these things.
Tressie McMillan Cottom is a doctoral student at Emory University. She has been studying the for-profit college industry for the last 5 years.
When we tell people to pursue higher education, when we tell people to get training, to invest in themselves, right, to be full participants in our society and our economic system, I think that we have a social responsibility to make those decisions clear for them and to minimize the penalty and the risk.
Her research has focused on one key area: are for-profit schools what America's education system really needs?
I believe that education is a public good and ideally should offer that to people who are doing all of the right things. This has been very characteristic, especially of these two sectors.
But Cottom isn't just an academic. She understands firsthand what she's talking about. Before she returned to school for her doctorate, she worked at a for-profit college, ITT Tech. And in that role, she says she didn't feel like she was serving the goals of education.
I not only felt like it was sales, I was told explicitly that no, we don't enroll and we don't admit, we are a sales force. And now that was one of my first moments of, I don't think I knew that and I don't think I signed up for it. And how does this change my relationship to the students that I'm working with?
Cottom says she was evaluated based on the number of students she enrolled. And she says her job title was completely misleading.
I think that calling people counselors when perhaps they are motivated by meeting sales quotas can again confuse people, because what does a counselor generally mean to us? Again, what is your school guidance counselor there to do? To help you, right? When you need to go see a counselor, to get help with something, it's a helping role, right? And that usually suggests that my allegiance is to the person I'm helping and not to the institution.
Cottom left after working at ITT Tech for just a few months. Year after year, stories from former students and employees like Cottom have come to light. And in 2010, the Government Accountability Office investigated. It sent undercover agents to several for-profit schools around the country. And this is what they found. High-pressure recruitment tactics were widespread. In this undercover video, the recruiter promises a high-paying salary as a medical assistant.
I think you would be awesome in the medical field, like a medical assistant. They start out at I'm not supposed to discuss salaries, but they start out at $38,000, $40,000. So I know medical assistants that are making $68,000, $69,000 a year.
Truth is, the average salary for a medical assistant is about $30,000 a year. And in this one, an admissions director tells a student he can't speak with a financial aid advisor until he enrolls.
So we were thinking that more, let's go crunch the numbers and stuff. And
okay, but here's the thing. You are not a financial aid expert.
Yeah, that's what we want.
Right.
Before we sign anything.
So honestly, I gotta tell you, I totally understand your concern, but I really, with all due respect, I don't believe you're ready to take this step, period.
Then the supervisor tries what many would see as bullying the student into enrolling.
That paper could say $40,000, and in your situation and at your stage in life, you should be ready to make the investment of time and money necessary to get you to where you should be at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not. What are you really afraid of?
Am I be on the hook for the $38,000, or? I mean, I need.
Are you real serious about a program?
Yeah, I am. Okay. But I want to see if I get any grants or anything.
Well, you're going to be able to see that once you get back there. But if you're real serious.
That's why I was kind of hoping to
main-
talk to a financial person to see
Yeah.
how much my payments would be and so on. Can they kind of like walk me through it first?
I know you're nervous.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping your financial people could say, all right, here's your total loans and how much your
Yeah, they're
payments
going to be able to
are.
do that when you get back there, but they're really not going to be able to sit down and go over everything with you if you're not willing to reserve your seat.
They've even said to me, executives of for-profit colleges, that no, Tracy, we are motivating them. And if part of motivating them is to hit their pain points, you know, and that's a direct quote, if part of motivating them is to hit their pain points, their objective says, well, that's fine as long as it gets them to start school.
Getting students to start school is key. The profit in for-profit colleges depends heavily on the number of students sitting in class. A few years back, in the height of the economic downturn, ITT Tech and other for-profit colleges became the darlings of Wall Street, their profits seemingly recession-proof.
They came in and really started investing heavily into this sector. Well, they just saw it as a profit-making machine. I mean, what's not to like about this from a Wall Street standpoint? You take none of the risk, you get all the rewards.
Senator Tom Harkin from Iowa has been leading the investigation in Washington of for-profit colleges and published a scathing report about the industry. Outline for me what you found to be the most troubling practices by the for-profit college industry.
I always said they had a bad business model. The business model was go out and recruit the poorest students. Why? They get the most Pell Grants and they get the most loans. So you turn that over to the for-profit college. Now if those students stay, fine, but if they drop out, the for-profit college has got the money and the student has the debt around their neck.
And Senator Harkin says, as the number of for-profit students has skyrocketed, the bill to American taxpayers has risen even faster. He's especially worried about Pell Grants, hundreds of millions of federal dollars that are given to poor students for tuition.
Right now, the for-profit sector educates about 10% of the higher education students in America. But they get 25% of the Pell Grants, the free money. Now, I think taxpayers have a right to ask, what are you doing with my money? What's happening to these students? Are they getting a good education? Are they getting jobs? The answer is no.
What about the cost? Is the cost in line with what your better state colleges and universities or your private colleges and universities?
We have one in Iowa, ITT, one of the worst actors. The cost for their associate degree was $48,000, 2 years. Not too far away is Des Moines Area Community College. Same degree, same exact degree, $9,000.
Harkin and others argue that these schools spend very little of the tuition they get on the students. According to SEC filings, last year, ITT Tech brought in $1.3 billion in revenue. Roughly 20% of that was pocketed as profits. Another 30% was spent on advertising and recruiting, and less than half was spent on the education itself, the schooling of students.
They're not getting a good education. They're dropping out at tremendous rates. Private investors pocket the money. Students have the debt.
The dropout rate for those federally funded for-profit colleges, on average, 50%, according to Harkin's report. When we return, more about for-profit colleges that leave students with crushing personal debt and degrees the students say are not leading to jobs. He was pursuing the American dream.
There used to be really, really nice houses. We call them flats here.
Margie Donaldson is a graduate of one of the largest for-profit colleges in America.
As a little girl, I always wanted to, you know, work in corporate America and, you know, live the
Good evening. Tonight, an investigation into the surging popularity of for-profit colleges. These are not your Penn States or your USCs. Those schools, like most traditional schools of higher learning,
American dream, and I didn't want to be a product of my environment. And the best way to do that was to go to school and get an education, get that degree. That degree speaks in volumes. Once you get that, nobody can tell you anything.
And on the wall of her home, Donaldson has that degree. So what are students at these for-profits getting for all that money? And who's paying the bill? Well, it turns out you are. Our story begins in Detroit with a woman who thought or non-profit. But in the last few years, the popularity of for-profits, like the University of Phoenix and ITT Tech, have grown so dramatically they now account for 10% of all college students in the United States. They also are very expensive.